Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Forecast, and today's video I'm going to be going through my Champions League roundup, and I'm just going to go through some key points from some specific games. And the game I want to start with is Bodo Glimt at home to Manchester City, and the key thing I'm going to talk about is obviously the City's defensive issues. Conceding 3 goals to Bodo Glimt is a real problem, and City dominated the ball as you would expect from this game. But they're really struggling to defend transitions right now, and it's really exposing this inexperienced City defence. And Max Line, he's a decent player, but he's only been on loan at Watford. He's not at Manchester City standard. And United found it so easy, and so did Bodo Glimt. Something's got to change with that defence, otherwise they can keep conceding chances after chances. And Donnarumma made some great saves to actually keep it at 3 goals, and it definitely could have been more in this game. And they also deserved to win Bodo Glimt. They created way more better chances throughout the game. And I don't think it's being helped by the fact that I don't think Rodri is the same player that he once was. And he's not offering the same protection to the back line in previous seasons since he's come back from that ACL injury. And for this game, that midfield of Reinders and Rico Lewis isn't the strongest midfield for a game like this. But there's still no excuse to losing to Bodo Glimt away from home at 3-1 and being battered by Bodo Glimt. City will be hoping it will just simply change when Mark Gay comes in, and I've got no doubt it will improve the defence, but I also feel like the defence is very disorganised, it's very low in confidence, and I think Guardiola might have to look at dropping the defence back a couple of yards because it's been so easy to get in behind. And look, the high defensive line has been somewhat effective. It's caught out the Manchester United 3 times in that game, and it caught out Bodo Glimt once in that game. But this high line, I think, is a contributing factor for why so many chances are being created against Manchester City right now. And I think he needs to adapt from it before he gets his players back. For example, his Vardiels, his Diaz, his Stones. Getting these players back are really important because first of all, they have the experience, but also they have the understanding to play in the system that Pep Guardiola wants them to, because they've done it in the past and this season. Apart from the City loss, all Premier League sides actually managed to win their games, and I think to an extent that has showed the level of the Premier League compared to the rest of the leagues. And why is there a difference in the quality of the Premier League sides compared to the other sides in the Champions League? It's simply because these sides have more money. And despite some of these clubs struggling in the Premier League, for example, Spurs, they're still able to put out good performances and do well in the Champions League because of this sort of difference in the amount of money that these sides have to spend. And this is proven by the fact that Spurs are 5th place in the Champions League. And this is also proven by the fact that 5 out of the top 8 sides in the Champions League so far this season are English, meaning they'd automatically qualify for the round of 16. And City are in 11th place and could still qualify, as they are level on points with a side in 6th place, which is PSG, which just shows the difference in the level of the Premier League compared to other leagues. And the other league that I wanted to talk about, which has sort of done the opposite of the Premier League and actually become sort of exposed because of this Champions League week, is the Bundesliga. Frankfurt are currently 33rd place and cannot qualify for any stage of Champions League now, and they lost their game to Karabag away from home. And look, Karabag can be a reasonably tough place to go. Chelsea struggled away at Karabag, but this is still a poor result. And the fact that a Bundesliga side is even in the top 24 of the Champions League is concerning, or not even close to the top 24. The other couple of clubs that have been struggling is, first of all, Bayer Leverkusen, who lost to Olympiacos away from home, had 72% of the ball but couldn't find a way past the Olympiacos keeper, who made some great saves, and Olympiacos actually won that game 2-0. And the other game, which actually showed the biggest difference in the quality of the leagues, is Spurs and Dortmund, where Spurs won 2-0 over Dortmund. A side that's second in the Bundesliga, and Dortmund couldn't win against a side that's 14th in the Premier League and have been woeful so far this season, showing the gap between the Premier League and the Bundesliga right now. In fairness, Bayern Munich did win their game, but Bayern aren't really part of sort of the other 17 clubs that are in the Bundesliga and don't really represent it, because they're on another scale in terms of how much they can spend and their pull factor. And I don't particularly like the fact that we've got such a big gap between some of the top European leagues right now. And I think it shows that the good guys can't really win, because the reason why the Bundesliga doesn't spend like the Premier League is, first of all, because they don't have rich owners, because they have more than 50% of the club is owned by the fans, which I really like because it keeps ticket prices down and makes them cheap. But the result of this is that you don't have the same sort of quality of side. And I think a lot of Bundesliga fans would actually say they're quite happy how they are, and they don't really care in terms of getting those rich owners so they can compete at the top level, and they'd rather keep ticket prices down, which I do respect. I do respect that side of it. And it's actually something that I wish that all the top leagues brought in terms of fan ownership. I think it really adds to the league, and it keeps the connection between the fans and the players. Now looking at the game, what I would actually say about the Spurs-Dortmund game is that Dortmund needed to adapt against Spurs in this game. They need to go direct, and they need to go long, and they need to sort of sit in a low block, because that is so effective against Thomas Frank so far this season. He's had absolutely no idea when you've looked to do this, when you've looked to make yourself difficult to beat. And then Thomas Frank basically doesn't know what to do. But what Dortmund did do is they played a rather high line and gave space for Spurs to get in behind, and this really helped them in this game. And this was a crucial factor for why Spurs managed to win this game. Spurs were definitely helped by the red card in that game, but up to that point, Spurs were playing better than Dortmund. And I do still think Spurs are going to continue to struggle in the Premier League, because sides in the Premier League don't do this. They sit in low blocks, they make it really difficult for you to beat, and they've forced Spurs to break sides down, which they've been unable to do all season. And this is a trend I actually noticed in basically all of the games. Looking at this Newcastle PSV game, the reason why Newcastle won 3-0, why it was so comfortable, was the fact that all the goals sort of came from pressing high and PSV mistakes, apart from the last game. The first goal, it's just a mistake playing out from the back from PSV. The keeper passes it up to a midfielder, Newcastle win the ball in the midfield, and then it's a simple goal for Newcastle 1-0 up, and Wissa converts it. The next goal is PSV just playing out from the back, Wissa nicks the ball, passes it to Gordon, it's a simple goal for Newcastle to make it 2-0, and then they go on to score another one to win the game 3-0. And you simply can't do this away from home against Premier League sides, and in general against Premier League sides, because they've got enough quality to match you. PSV might be a good side in the Eredivisie this season, but you can't go to somewhere like Newcastle or somewhere like St James's and look to match a side like that in that sort of style. You need to go direct, you need to go long, and you need to force Newcastle to break you down. The exact same thing happened in the Marseille-Liverpool game. In this game, Marseille looked to match Liverpool, looked to press high, but also invited pressure, allowed Liverpool to press high, and tried to be the better football side. But they're not the better football side than Liverpool, and this cost them throughout in this game, and it resulted in Liverpool having constant chances on the counter-attack, loads of space for players like Wirtz, and you can't give players like Wirtz space and time. And it just played right into the strengths of Liverpool, and this resulted in Liverpool winning 3-0. So I think teams in the Champions League and teams in general need to understand when they're going up against a side that's clearly high quality, managers need to learn how to adapt and look at the weaknesses and try exploit the weaknesses, because you need to find a different way to win, because you're not going to win playing your style of football if they're better at that. And that is exactly what happened in those three games I've just mentioned. Something else I wanted to talk about was actually in the Marseille-Liverpool game, and that was the Liverpool system for the game against Marseille, because Liverpool went with a 4-2-2 with sort of a left 10, a right 10, and two holding midfielders. And I thought this was really clever, and it was actually a really good system to employ for this game. Because I look at the system and go, what does this get the best out of, and who does it get the best out of? Well, first of all, I think it gets the best out of Kerkez and Frimpong, because they were able to operate as wingbacks and essentially as wingers, especially Frimpong. They got the best out of Jeremy Frimpong in this game. He could have been better overall, but I could see him contributing hugely for Liverpool in the future if he plays in that role. I thought Gravenberch and McAllister played well as the double pivot. I thought Dominic Szoboszlai played really well as a right 10. I think that role really suits him, almost a half winger. This is a role that he's also very familiar with doing. He did it a lot in the Bundesliga, and he can also provide that support for Frimpong, who's not the strongest defensively out at the right back position. But the player that benefited most from this change, I think, was Florian Wirtz. I think that is the ideal position for him to operate in as a left 10, because he's not an out-and-out winger, and I don't think he's actually an out-and-out 10. I think that's the best area for him to operate. And then he's still got the option of Kerkez on the overlap. It's so similar to what he did in the Bundesliga, and then he had Grimaldo as the option on the overlap. And then Ferry Katika, I don't think it really matters, but I actually think he would work really well in a front two as with a left striker, because he loves cutting in off the left-hand side. And I actually think this is a really good position for Mo Salah as the right striker, because this allows us to get Mo Salah into more goal scoring positions, which he's failed to do so far this season. So I really do like this system, and I want to see Slot use it more at Liverpool, especially in the games where it's going to be a bit more open. For example, we play Bournemouth on the weekends. I want to see Liverpool with that same system for Bournemouth on the weekend, because I think we could definitely do it against a side like that that's a bit more open. So the next sort of thing I wanted to talk about in this sort of roundup was the Real Madrid's win over Monaco, winning 6-1, and it was a real dominant win. And what I wanted to talk about was sort of how Arbeloa set up Real Madrid. And I think to an extent he just allowed the players to play with freedom. And I think that is probably the only way right now a Real Madrid manager can succeed and basically allow the players to do what they want. It seems whenever a manager like an Alonso comes in with sort of a specific tactics, and this is how we're going to set up, this is what you're going to do, it just seems to fail. I think it's the first time in a while we've seen that front three actually playing well together. Vinicius Jr. played well, Mbappe played well, Mustawento played well on that right-hand side, and they played really well as a side. Vinicius Jr. I think was the standout performer in that attack. I think another major reason is the fact they were trying to prove the fact that Alonso was the problem. They're also going up against a mediocre Monaco side, I think it is fair to say. But I think just sort of allowing the players to play with freedom may be the only way for a Real Madrid manager to succeed. So then I've also got Arsenal. Sort of what I took away from Arsenal was, first of all, it was a good performance, but Gabriel Jesus needs to start up front for Arsenal on a consistent basis, because he just offers so much more, and it works in the Arsenal system. He's a striker that can drop in, link up play, and he's actually a lot more efficient in front of goal than Victor Gyökeres. So I think that Gabriel Jesus should start up front over Gyökeres for Arsenal. And I think Gyökeres actually proved he's a better player off the bench. He was actually very good off the bench when he came on against Inter Milan, and he got a goal, and it was a brilliant finish. And he was able to be effective on the counter-attack when the game was a bit more stretched and when Arsenal were leading. That was the key thing. Inter Milan were a lot more attacking at that point in the game, so Gyökeres found some space in behind. And from now on, I think that's when Gyökeres should be coming on in games, because I think that's when he can be most effective, unless the game is very open almost from the start. I still don't think he's a great player at all, Victor Gyökeres, but I think there's at least some sort of use potentially for him. Looking at the Slavia Prague-Barcelona game, Barcelona were excellent in front of goal, scoring 4 goals, but there was a clear weakness from that game, and that was corners. Both were from flick-ons at the near post. One resulted in Slavia Prague putting in, and Lewandowski puts in an own goal. And that made me sort of realise Barcelona's defence is actually quite small. They don't have a very tall, imposing defence and very tall players at all. So I definitely think this is an area sides can get at Barcelona. And they don't have the ability to go and buy a player. So I think this is going to cause them some problems going into future rounds of the Champions League. I look at someone like an Arsenal and I say, I think Arsenal could 100% exploit this issue that Barcelona have with Gabriel. Some other things is, in Chelsea's 1-0 win over Paphos, their attack wasn't good enough. Liam Delap was terrible. Garnacho offered nothing, and Pedro Neto, I mean, he was probably the best out of the three, but he still didn't offer a lot at all. And Estevan needs to be starting. When he came on, the Chelsea looked a lot better, and they looked a lot more threatening. So Estevan needs to be starting over Neto or over Garnacho on the wings, and they need to start giving him more minutes. My final thing is around the Sporting PSG game. And look, PSG aren't looking like a great side this season. I still think they have the potential to win that Champions League because of the quality of the squad and having a manager like Luis Enrique. But mistakes in that game really did cost them. Losing to Sporting is a real poor result. And Chevalier was definitely at fault for that last goal for Sporting. It's poor keeping. He can't just be pushing the ball out to Suarez, who scored 2 goals in this game against PSG. And there's going to be a real question around why did PSG switch Chevalier for Donnarumma? Because Chevalier might be better with the ball at his feet, but surely it's so much more important. I don't care what the system is, for a keeper to be a good shot stopper, which Donnarumma is, and a reliable shot stopper. And also going into the next sort of rounds of the Champions League, having an elite penalty stopper could be so important. Let me know your thoughts on this Champions League roundup, and if you enjoy this video, go subscribe to the channel as well as liking the video.